Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Miles Trial. Today, actually, Miles's trial is on break because of a holiday, and Miles's trial will continue and will resume on tomorrow and also the day after for this week. And this week, there's only 2 trial days as opposed to the usual 4 days of trial we have been seeing. Quite only because this week is July 4th, and that is Happy Independence Day to all of our American viewers out there. So very happy to be able to celebrate July 4th this week, despite the trial going on. And again, just to simply recap the trial itself, Miles is currently facing 12 financial charges and 1 count of RICO in the Southern District Court of New York, and he has never pled guilty to these charges. And today, actually, instead of giving you guys an update on the trial, we will be doing a little bit of a recap on the trial. And also, a very interesting court document has been uploaded this weekend, and we will also be discussing that one as well, as it has mentioned a number of very interesting details that pertains to the upcoming trial dates. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Ava and Isla onto the show. Welcome
Hello.
back, Ava and Isla.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Saran. Hi, Ella.
Thank
Hi,
you for
everyone.
having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I know, so before we jump into the document, because I know, Ava, you have been very excited about this document because of the details it has mentioned. And I mean, it's great to actually, once we do get into it, during the later segment of the show, I'm pretty sure our audience will become very interested by the witnesses, Miles's legal team has in mind. But before that, why don't we get into the witnesses that have already came up, because as I know, the government is on their last couple of witnesses, if not pretty much on the last and final ones tomorrow. So what I do know that, so let's start by this way, right? We kind of categorize the witnesses that have showed up. A lot of them do pertain to, car dealerships and, as well as the Mava home base as well, because, these are properties that they are claiming in their arguments from the prosecution side that, this is what Miles has purchased with the investors' money. So why don't we give the viewers a little bit of a recap on that regard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, there are a couple of witnesses that the government had called on upon, or that were related to, purchase of luxury vehicles, Bugatti, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and then Mawa home base as well. And all of these claims were made to say that, investors' money going into G clubs, whereas, G clubs have purchased these assets for family use, for specifically Mr. Guo's family use. However, in our defense cross-examinations with all these, witnesses, it has appeared that, much of these luxury purchases were actually related to services potentially provided by G Clubs, the company. And in that G Clubs agreement with selling the membership, the potential and the ideal future is to ensure that the G Clubs members will be able to have a secure physical home basis, which will be the exact future for us to have the Mawa base for New Federal State of China. In the same time, it appeared in one of the defense cross-examination with the former CEO of G Clubs, it appeared that these luxury vehicle services were actually in part of the process that G Clubs is pertaining insurances to make sure that all of these luxury vehicles would be able to have rental services to G Clubs members. So, with that being said, despite much of, the wire proofs or, the PDFs, the PowerPoints that the government had spent lots of time to make, it, but it does appear that all of these purchases and assets were actually in the scope of G Clubs. Some of them were not available before the indictment because of internal processing issues, because of insurance status, but that was, not a fraud, step saying that, the luxury services were only available to family members.
Right, and I think that's an important point too, and a detail I want to point out is that these details, about the usage of these vehicles and also the services that G Clubs can provide, that also came up in the testimony of the CEO of G Clubs, which is, something that is now a part of this trial because it's being testified about in court. And I think that is a very interesting thing because they also testify to a number of services that G Clubs is planning to, or have set in store for its members, correct? Do you guys remember some of these services they have listed?
Well, I think they've reached out to yacht services, and there were some Puerto Rico hotel services that the G Club CEO has also mentioned. With regarding to I think the Lamborghini car, it appeared that the G Club's actually in contact with insurance companies to make sure that when G Club's members came into to rental the vehicle for further use, that the insurance companies would be able to provide certain respective insurance as well. And at the same time, the G Club CEO also testified that beyond Mala bases, she also personally visited some of the luxury hotels and mansions and in Europe as well, and these will potentially become other bases in Europe for G Clubs as well. So it appeared that in her testimony, many of the G Clubs members or supporters within the movement actually get a bigger scope of ideas of how G Clubs had developed itself in the past few years.
Right, and I think that is a great point to point out too, because these are just a couple of years, G Clubs has been established itself for, and there hasn't been sufficient time for them to kind of gather their resources around and be able to, really grow into their vision, right? Because it's only been a couple of years. Right now, we're still pretty much seeing the infancy of G Clubs. So I think the very important point that to I guess pinpoint in the CEO of G Club's testimony is the fact that there isn't just one base or one home base or one club in Puerto Rico. There's going to be many across the world, and that's the key thing is the fact that they are not exclusive to one location, but they are there just because they want to provide services to members who are traveling there, right? It's a club. You're going to enjoy those services when you guys are on vacation, whenever you guys are in the area, right? So I think that is a important thing to consider when we're looking at this detail currently in this trial, because this isn't just about one thing right now. It's about the vision, and I think that has been a theme about some of the CEOs who have also testified. I think the CEO of the Himalaya Exchange in his testimony also gave us actually gave us a very good overview of the design of the H coin, right? Ava, do you have anything you want to share in regards to that aspect? Because I know during the testimony and especially during the cross-examination, there were a lot of insights given about the design of the H coin and kind of the white papers of it as well, right? Like the plans for H coin in the future.
I think I learned quite a bit about H coin. Actually, I didn't read the white paper. I have to be honestly completely before the trial. But in the trial, I felt like I acquired so much knowledge, and I felt like I had gained a first-hand experience, see those real difficulties that the Himalaya Exchange has experienced. Whether it's a legal challenge, whether it's vendor services disruption, I've learned so much about it. And then I actually now know the credits and the phases that when Miles School and the advisors and the funders of the Himalaya Exchange, when they thought about how they can introduce this to the world globally, why they're thinking about it, how they actually gonna dodge the attack from the CCP, because this is simultaneously happening. So you cannot just go launch something as a normal company that operating a free market, right? Protected with rule of law. No, this is not. This is basically CCP has been everywhere. So you kind of, with the insights learned, how the CCP going to react to you. So you have that knowledge in mind when you actually introduce something, when you want to roll out something. That is very, very thoughtful, pre-planned, launching in stage. So now I fully understand why they have to go phase one, the credits, and only giving the fellow fighters, who the followers who actually really believed they can take down the CCP, and they really believed that this world is due for a change, because if CCP is not taken down, nothing would stand as it is. So that's why we all in. So that's why as the phase one is to allow us to buy into the HDO credits, which you can use to buy the H coin as a super discounted rate at 10 cents per coin, right? So and don't forget, one of the information throughout the trial that was told us that before even launch on November 2021, H coin has already sold all the coin for that year, and they raised $100 million already. So that's the fact. right? So they're signaling that potentially a lot of people out there wanted to get those products, but because of the CCP hanging in the back of the mind, right? So that's why the phase 1 and then the phase 2, they're gonna gradually introduce, the rest of, like, for example, the app, the Himalaya Pay app, and also starting putting all those cryptocurrency on the public blockchain. Because once you put on the public blockchain, that means you open door, you have to endure the attack from the CCP, because we all knew what CCP is capable of, like heist after heist, right? Open market, open free manipulation of the stock and the crypto market that happened in the past few years. So this is why I developed a whole new appreciation in terms of how this whole thing has been rolled out. And Miles Guolong told us, cryptocurrency is the future, because it solves one fundamental issue of the world is basically decrease the level of exploitation from the government to the deplorables, because fiat currency is one of those tools that the powerful people could use against us, and deplorable, especially when we're not well informed, right? So this is a way of balancing it, especially pushing back to the tyranny that we, the Chinese, are too familiar with, which is the CCP, the dictatorship. So yeah, so I really appreciate the cross and the direct. I have to thank for the prosecutor team introduce those witnesses, because I've learned so much from those witnesses who signed the non-prosecution agreement with the prosecution team, and then brought the whole picture to me. So yeah.
Yeah, now that you brought up the non-prosecution agreements, and also thank you for giving the viewers a insight about the Himalaya exchange, and also the important aspect of protecting, the investors' assets, right? Essentially, I think that has been a main theme about that we have learned really in this case is Miles and everybody's efforts to really protect everybody's assets.
Money and investment.
Yeah, and that's why I think when you brought up non-prosecution agreement, it reminded me of another witness, right? The individual from Crane, Hai from Khaled.
That's
I think
right, yeah.
in some of the evidences they presented in court, right? I think you get to see how the CCP does really make has means to make efforts to kind of I guess put their hands on the investments, right? And I think we get to see the efforts from everybody to kind of move the money out of the way, to find a way to keep everybody's investments safe. And I think just seeing the amount of effort through some of the evidences, it's pretty clear, that it must have been very difficult to be able to set things up and design things in a certain way that everybody can stay protected, because in the end, that is the most important thing, right? That is to be able to protect all the investors, and also this essential theme of taking down the CCP is all for the people. So
That's right.
I think this all ties in together with the very essential theme of the new federal state of China and its efforts to take down the CCP. So when it comes to that, Isla, do you have and Ava as well? Feel free to just share. But I think this witness the government has spent a lot of time with, right? I think even to this day, this witness was the one who the government has spent the most amount of meetings with. Has met with for the most amount of time. So can you guys tell just recap for the viewers the points and arguments that is brought up through this witness?
You mean the Kerrang advisory group? Okay. So this witness, first of all, I want to give you a category of, because I actually did a little bit. So altogether, the government called 34 witnesses, but one of the witnesses, FBI employee, I think she was, the forensic accountant, and she appeared twice. So altogether, it's a 35 witness called to testimony, but actually it's only 34. So among the 34, the 12 of them are actually on payroll of the government. Okay, so that including the FBI agent, the Southern District of New York employee, like a paralegal or other capacity, and also including one SEC chief, branch chief. So these are categorized as a government employee, so among their 34 witnesses. And the other one is they have a 6 alleged former whistleblower movement followers, and they claim they're alleged victims. So these are the 6. And then they have a 4 former employee that employed by one or more enterprises that follow under the umbrella of the G series. So there's 4, including the former CEOs of G Club and former CEOs of Himalaya Exchange. And also they included vendors or service providers, 10 of them. So these are like a Lamborghini, like a Bugatti, like the Jamie Wilson, like a Prince Bank and Mercantile Bank in Puerto Rico. And then they have a one consultant, government hired arm's length kind of a consultant, which was had a 2 million
financial consultant.
Yes, financial consultant from Bretto, I think a Bretto consulting group.
Yeah, Bretto.
And then the other 2 are listed at the separate category because these are involving Luke Despin, the Chapter 11's bankruptcy trustee, which to do with Miles Guo's bankruptcy case. So there's 2 witnesses related to Luke Despin's because one is the law firm that retained by the trustee Luke Despin, or Dupont, I should say, because Despin is the English way of saying his last name, but it's a more fancier French name, so it's Dupont, Luc Dupont, and then his son-in-law, who was basically, the lawyer was arranged by Luke Despin's firm, Paul Hastings. So altogether, these are the categories of the government witnesses. But talking about Haitham Khalid, I actually went through his little bit transcript, and I noticed that I learned so much because the government spent most of the time in their direct questioning with this witness. And our defense also spent a lot of time with this witness. But through their collective efforts, I've actually identified so many lies of this witnesses. It's unbelievable. And this is kind of I'm not surprising because when we went over his prosecution agreement, he had a kind of a series of wrongdoings even prior to the whistleblower movement even started. So there's a history of wrongdoings of him. So I actually simply just listed a few of his lies that came across really clearly for everybody to see in the testimony. Is one of them, he claimed that remember that he secretly recorded a lot of meetings when he was still employed with GTV, and he said he just randomly record them because there was no plan, there was no purpose. But through the cross-examination, I think that was very clear that it was only him that decided what to record and how long to record and when to push the stop button and when to push the end button. So I think that was completely a lie that was dismantled. And also talking about the money that he took from the G clubs, yes, and he was saying that he doesn't want to continue provide service to G Club as the escort agent. Remember that he's saying that he wants to terminate the relationship. But the fact is, it couldn't be more far from what he claimed. And his lawyer, there's black and white ink, and an email, I think it was in July 2021, and basically outlined his lawyer's position so clearly that he does not want to end this relationship with G Club, and he's saying he's offered a lot of compromises in order to keep this contract, right, to continue to be able to charge the 2% service fee. So that was another big lie, which I believed in the sidebar conversation from what I read on the transcript, that it's possibly that the defense would impeach him on that basis in terms of his testimony. And also, he also lied on his affidavit. Remember that during the cross, Sabrina, our lawyer, started with that, was asking him a affidavit that he sworn and signed affidavit supporting Miles Guo's PAX case. That's another litigation that was started in 2017, and he basically said, yeah, this is nothing to do with Miles Guo, this is not his assets, this is not his companies. So that was in that was May 2021, and he did that. But then he basically rejected what he said previously. He completely, totally kind of countered what he was saying. So that's another lie, just to prove that how lying almost become a second nature for him. Like he does not take his vow seriously, basically. And also, let's see, there are other things that he talked about. Oh, and the arbitration, because remember that there is arbitration that G Club took Crane to, and he basically even representing, because one of the video, remember that he secretly recorded a video where Miles Guo was yelling, and Miles Guo get kind of upset in the meeting. So he was saying, yeah, he didn't know, he secretly recorded, but he didn't actually trying to find out what was what people was discussing in that meeting, even though it was a heated discussion, even though it has to do with money moving and to do with Crane and G Club. And he said, oh well, I just picked that meeting and recorded. I'm not interested in what they're saying, so I did not ask anybody to do a translation. I didn't even not to go Google. Like I didn't want to know anything about that information. But that was a lie, because there's arbitration, and he actually provided that video to the arbitration. The arbitration was I think it was in late 2021 or something around that. I don't know the second arbitration, because he did say the second arbitration he provided. Maybe it's early even 2022. But in that arbitration, our lawyer mentioned specifically there is an English translation of that video, and was showed in the arbitration, and he was testifying in the arbitration, and he witnessed other people's testifying in the arbitration. So that's again, is showing that he's lying, that he has no prior knowledge about what the video was talking about. So it comes to me so clear that this person is not reliable at all, whatever that he said. Yeah.
Right, so it seems to me, there's a lot of discrepancies, and also I want to clarify on the fact that you said the translations. So the meetings, the meetings were in Chinese, so that is the reason why there needed to be translations, just so he can testify to the fact that he understood what is being said.
Oh,
and
one more thing.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing. So when he trying to negotiate, right? Because he said he was trying to cancel the service agreement with the G Club, because he no longer wanted to be escort agent. That in that negotiation, inside the transcript and during the testimony, it came out he actually threatened. Okay, he threatened G Club. He's saying when his lawyer was negotiating with the G Club, trying to maintain the contractual relationship, continue serving as escort agent. He said, Crane. He suggested if the account did not remain in place, his lawyer would send the funds. That the funds of the G Club funds retained in Crane accounts to the state of New York's unclaimed funds, offices of unclaimed funds. So that's a threatening of actually handing over 56 millions of investors' money to United States of government. But I guess that didn't work, because G Club said, no matter what, we don't want to work with you. So so they took him to arbitration and got the 56 million back. So the arbitrator ruled at the end against Crane, and so that's something I want to add.
Yeah, and I think also the CEO of G Clubs also testified in regards to this arbitration, because I think these were individuals who have handled the situation, who are associated with the situation as well.
Correct.
Yeah, and I just looked at the chats real quick. I think there's a little bit of confusion as to why the court is on break today. Yes, and also yes, the court is on break today because I believe July 1st is the Independence Day for Canada, and I think because of the fact that the Canada's role in the Independence War, that is the reason why maybe the court has decided to take the day off.
Maybe.
But possibly. But today is a Canadian holiday, and yes, we are in New York City, so maybe that the reason I had mentioned could be why the court is on break. But we will be back tomorrow for the trial and also the day after. I know, with that being said, you did mention the PAX case, and also the Chapter 11 trustee, and also the lawyer from the bankruptcy firm that was that was also a part of the bankruptcy case. Can you give us a little bit more of the arguments made in that through that witness and also the direct examination? Because I think there were a number of very, very good points brought up through just this one witness alone to really paint the whole picture of the timeline of these cases, the PAX case, bankruptcy case, and also the case currently taking place right now.
So I think because this is really the whole journey of
Right.
Miles School's unrestricted lawfare, and also I would say that's a history of whistleblower movement and new federal state of China under the shadow of the CCP and CCP's persecution. The movement actually grew so much, and so from the PAX case started in 2017, which lasted 5 years up to 2022 February 15th, where Miles School declared bankruptcy. It's because this is directly related to the last court order from the PAX case, which basically literally says, say to Miles School that you have to turn up 134 million US dollars within 5 business days, otherwise you're going to jail. So that's basically prompt the Chapter 11 bankruptcy petition application, specifically on February 15th, which is the 6th day after the court decision and within the 5 business days period. So, and then that basically it started another kind of a epic fight, which we witnessed quite a bit unusual things happening. When I saw Paul Hastings, the trustee, was appointed as the trustee for the debtor, that gives me that gives me quite a huge amount of unease, because I know Paul Hastings has been working closely, especially Paul Hastings as a global law firms. They have lots of clients in China, and these are directly controlled. These entities are directly controlled by the CCP or the state-owned companies. So that's put almost the law firm directly in conflict with Miles School, because we all know Miles School is the CCP enemy number one. So when you're looking at a law firm who half of their, possibly near half of their profits are coming from one party, which is Chinese Communist Party, so that puts me really at unease. That's also why Miles School actually appealed the decision of why against Luc Dupont being appointed as the trustee for his Chapter 11's case. But also prior to his appointment, we witnessed some kind of a terms, about appointing the trustee in the first place, because Luc Dupont was not the first trustee. Some other gentleman named Whitley, right, was first going through the full vetting period, and it was properly checked, and it was appointed as a trustee, but very, very strangely, quickly be replaced, okay, and in violation, particularly in the bankruptcy court. I remember at that time, the judge, Manning, was saying that, talking to the trustee office and say, the way you remove the first trustee is in directly violation of the bankruptcy rule. And she specifically warned and said you cannot replacing people like this and putting another trustee in the way. But I don't know what happened. Nobody's, other than the debtor was, motion and reject, but the court eventually uphold the appointment of Luc Dupont, the second trustee. And then ever since that, I just learned from this testimony that Luc Dupont's and the trustee and trustee's firm has already took more than 300 actions, right? They have collected more than 25 million fees, okay? And they recovered 100 million, so their fees is like a quarter of what's covered that. Right, so that's the second bankruptcy proceeding, and there's lots of things. There's TROs, there's temporary restraining order, there's protests, there's lots of things going through that. But it's all to do with the CCP at the back. That leads to today, basically, the criminal cases, because the CCP has always wanted to repatriate, bring back Miles School, or eliminate him forever, right? That's the goal of the CCP, and they want to destroy Miles School. They want to destroy what the movement, the whistleblower movement that started and basically led by Miles School. So that has been the only purpose of the CCP, I guess. But right now we're witnessing this in the United States. That's why we wanted to tell American, including those American governments, people, the good people who are working within governments, because a lot of things they don't know, right? They really don't know. They don't have the whole puzzles. They only see one piece in front of them. So that's why we're hoping by tuning in and pay attention to Miles School's trial, you will be able to put all those missing pieces together. So you will be able to see the full picture, what's going on, and what is the danger and threat to America.
I want to add just a little bit more on the PAX case. In fact, that a PAX stands for Asia Pacific Opportunity Fund, and Mr. Guo's role in it was because Mr. Guo, in the past times, made a personal guarantee between a loan that PAX, the Asia Pacific Opportunity Fund loaned to a company named the Shining Time Leading, I believe.
Yeah.
And then it's documented. Actually, PAX had already started legal actions since 2015, and it was the year when Miles fled from communist China to United States. And so, PAC started there and, asked for a series of actions to ask Shining Time Leading to repay the loan. And, the loan was failed. And if we look at the timeline of when PAC has actually initiated that lawsuit into the New York Supreme High Court, it was actually the day right before the April 19th, 2017. It was the exact date that the Chinese Communist Party issued the arrest notice to Miles Guo. It was simply because that Miles has announced to the public that he will appear on Voice of America, whistleblowed about corruptions and families hiding a huge amounts of assets overseas related to one of the top officials of the Chinese Communist Party. So we could call it as a retaliation from the Chinese Communist Party, seeing Miles gaining more influence, by whistleblowing about CCP's internal corruptions. And so it was at that time, like what Ava said, PAC started to initiate a series of actions which request Mr. Guo to, repay the loan by fine, 134 million within 5 business days with immediate payment, and with returning one of the yachts that was actually owned and controlled by Mr. Guo's daughter, Mei Guo, and by saying that, if the yacht was not returned to the jurisdictions on time, that for each day, Mr. Guo and his family will pay 500,000 USD dollars for per day just as the fine for the yacht. So a series of legal actions, had been initiated since the day that Mr. Guo officially, publicly stated and whistleblowed about CCP's corruption. So along that, road, that we understand how much pressure Mr. Guo and his family had been endured from the Chinese Communist Party. And just as what Ava had been introduced, right? It was because of the huge amount of fine and under that pressure that Mr. Guo actually did not even move a single penny of the investors' money to repay the fine, right? Instead, Mr. Guo chose to file, personal bankruptcy in Connecticut, United States, to avoid and to cut all of these legal burden. And so that's where lead Mr. Guo today. And I think what the government was trying to say is to use all these past legal cases to portray that Mr. Guo has many of lawsuits and this person has been in huge legal trouble, as it always is, and was trying to say he owed creditors for a lot of monies, so it was no wonder that another fraud scheme had been taking place. But in fact, that if we look at the root cause, it always comes from CCP's attacks.
That's right.
So this was exactly why we're pointing out the CCP elements along Mr. Guo's fight to take down the CCP.
And one of the things I wanted people to connect, because the Miles Guo had the 76 legal cases, and many of those cases are brought by the CCP proxies, just like the PAX case, right? Because we have been long claimed that the chairman, the executive chairman of the PAX, which is the parent company called PAG, are actually run by the CCP spies. His name is Shan Weijian. But if you're looking at the creditor, so the trustee and working with the credit committee, okay? So if you're looking at who are calling, who are on the creditor list, okay? These are connected with the 76 legal cases. There's a reason why the CCP using so many proxies, because so they can say, I'm a legitimate creditor. For example, one of the creditors, her name is Rui Ma, and she was accusing Miles Guo raping her. Okay, and if you look at the initial complaints from her, and this sounds strange because I've never looked at any other raping case complaint, but this case has no location, no time. the entire complaint is very, very bizarre. Okay, when I read it the first time, I was thinking, this does not pinpoint anything because there's no specific information about wrongdoing. So and Rima never, under the repeated requests, but during the past 5 years after she brought the complaint, and she never showed up for even one deposition. Okay, so she is a mystery to many of us, but she has remained on the creditor list. Okay, just give you a sense of who are those the trustee are working with. The trustee are working with so-called creditors, and this is just one of the cases, and many of them are actually on the among the 76 legal cases that Miles was still facing. So this is another way of saying the CCP, the invisible hands are all over the place. And the other things I learned from the testimony is this trustee, the Luc Dupont, I think probably I would have used this word, sabotage. Okay, there is a potential settlement between Pax and Guo. Okay, so Miles, Guo, and Pax had an opportunity to settle the disputes. I think it was back into 2000. I think it was 2002, the end of the 2002, if I remember the time correctly. But the trustee did not want that to happen. So something that happened that we may learn in the if I'm not sure whether it will be brought up or not, but I'm guessing we just wait and see. So maybe the week after, when the defense team turns to talk about to question their witnesses, then we may have more information coming. Is something happened in November, right? If you recall, like November 17th, a meeting was called by the trustee and Guo, and basically through that information we learned from the past broadcast, we know something really bad happened. That's why it led to the 250 million extortion claim, which we observed so many pictures during the last 2 weeks of testimonies in court. So I think overall we will tie everything together and hoping to help the jury and the court and also the prosecuting team to see the full picture, because I really truly believe that they might only have a few bits and pieces puzzles in their hands, so they're thinking this is a fraud case, but we're telling everyone this is way bigger than fraud.
Right, because I think simply there's a number of details in that case as well where I think it was also brought up the fact that Miles has lost all his assets in Hong Kong due to the Chinese Communist Party.
That's right.
So I think along the whole entire journey of Miles, Miles's plans to take down the Chinese Communist Party, he has actually had lost a lot of things because of the Chinese Communist Party. And I think really when it comes down to potentially facing jail time and also forfeiting financial information by declaring bankruptcy, it really does show that the fact that he didn't use any of the investors' money to pay off the fines was a really good tell and a really good argument that was brought up by his legal team in court during the cross-examination of this witness. And I think with that being said, I know we are just down to 20 minutes for the show. Maybe we can talk about the new court document that was just uploaded, and also maybe if the opportunity arises, we can also fit in some bits and pieces about the victim witnesses that were introduced by the government. So I think with that being said, we can bring up the document just so the audience can take a look at the case number and also which document number it is. But without further ado, Ava, take it away with some of the key points from this document. I know you've been, I know some of the information have been really exciting to say the least.
Yeah, that's right. Because so for the first, I would say the first stage of this trial is the prosecuting team's flaw. Right, they had 6 weeks to present their evidence to say, hey, this man sitting in the chair is a criminal. So I think we're almost come to the end where the government, the prosecutor team is about to rest, right? So we're probably entering to the last day of their argument. So we're anticipating tomorrow they're going to finish their witness. They may have additional witness. We don't know that yet, but we're hoping to really see that the defense starts their calling their own witnesses. And this document, what I'm just referring to, is a document that the government just put it on to the dockets yesterday, and it's quite telling. It tells you what basically the government is challenging what the defense witness could introduce on the floor. basically. They're trying to preclude quite a bit of information that they think the defense would brought up during maybe the next 2 days or 3 days of their defense plan. So as you can see, this document I highlighted in different color, especially the first paragraph. It's basically summarize what the government seeks to preclude. And the very first one, it's saying the court should preclude testimony from individual investors who claim not to be victims of the charged schemes. So this is very interesting, as you know that in the first 6 weeks, the defense team introduced 6 victims, right? So-called victims.
Right.
And if you recall, I did a quick calculation, adding up their all investment numbers that they claimed. And this number, 1.3 million, is actually already included those amounts that they have already got refund. Remember that a lot of the investors either fully got their refund or majority, a big part of their investment has already been refunded.
Or they didn't ask for a refund.
That's right. So this number actually include already those dollar amounts that they already refunded. So their total initial investment is 1.3 million, introduced through 6 victims by the government. However, this fraud scheme that claimed by the government, the total is over 1 billion. So let's just use 1 billion, not worry about the numbers after the decimal. So if you do a quick calculation, all 6 victims, basically it's 0.0013. That means it's 0.13% of the investors that believed they are the victims. But in the way the government precluding other people, because Miles School's legal team are planning to introduce 3 victims to basically testify that they do not believe they themselves are victim of the so-called investment schemes. But for some reason, the government is denying the 99.87% of people. Okay, so saying that this is actually, it's 99.9987% of people's rights. Okay, so by actually saying that, they wanted precluding them claiming that they are not a victim. So I think it would be interesting to see the court ruling on this. I don't know what you guys thinking about the number, and where you can find in a investment opportunity that you can find this overwhelmingly majority people are happy.
Well, I think one of the points is all of the so-called victims that the government was trying to look for was individual investors, whereas individual investors were actually very tiny parts of the 1 billion. We do understand with all of the entities and enterprises that were mentioned in the indictment, many of the investment also came from big well-known family and also institutional investors as well.
Yeah.
None of these big well-known family or institutional investment hedge funds have claimed that they are actually victims of the schemes, so-called. Remember, the former president of GTB was actually John Morgan. Mr. John
That's
Morgan
right.
also
Yeah.
attended our ceremony with the new federal state of China as well, right? So you could only tell that there was only very limited numbers of people that the government can actually find and can actually put on the claims. And this was primarily why, when you saw the calculation, we understand, the majority of the investments or the majority of the investors understood, how much pressure that this investment have been attacked by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
And I think, Ava will introduce more because of these legal documents also confirm that there was a role that CCP played, into the journey.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know how they can find a way to preclude all of us saying that we're not the victim of Miles School, we're a victim of the CCP. Right? So that's what are we trying to say. So we'll see. And the second point is the court should preclude, so the government argued the court should preclude the irrelevant and unduly prejudiced testimony of defense witness 1. So this is very interesting. This is a great document because I didn't know much about the defense witness 1. When I saw this is actually my first time. seeing this in written. So there's a long paragraph, there's a lot of pages that are talking about this defense witness one. So this particular defense witness one had a very special encounter with the CCP police. So this was a investor back in, I think, 2021. He invested in GTV. 2020, he invested in GTV, and then and after that, he was experienced frequent harassment and surveillance by the Chinese police, and then the Chinese police harassed him, forced him to file a false complaint with SEC. Okay, and he had to do it in order to keep him and his family safe. Okay, and then later on he escaped, and he and his family escaped to United States, and he brought so much evidence with him, and in these documents there are some taste of what he actually have, and these are the real receipts, but the government are seeking to preclude those evidence that actually can potentially pointing a collusion, okay, between the CCP and SEC. So the government thinking this might be confusion and that might be too complicated and maybe confuse to jury. Okay, so they wanted to preclude those information from the defense witnesses' testimonies. But one of the, just to give you an idea, if we can turn to page, let's see the page number. If we can go to page 9 of these documents. So one of the reasons that the government's saying that they need to exclude this particular defense witness is because it introduces some political issues that very confusing. Okay, so yeah, this is exactly. So if you see a box on the top of the documents, this is presumably this is a communication, an email that this witness received from Shanghai police. Basically the synopsis of the email or the conversation they had is, the Senate is now impeaching Trump. So in the context of the conversation, they're talking about American politics, okay? So they say the senator is now impeaching Trump. He could not even help himself. Biden would go into the office. The new government would be taking care of Guo Wengui, which is Miles Guo's Chinese name, and his gang very soon. So his gang is referring probably to the movement itself. And so now we must pick up the momentum and act. So it was to get the investment money back quickly. Okay, so you need to be more proactive. So this is the Chinese police way of pressuring this real investor of GTV to basically complain SEC and get his money back. Okay, so you can see how sensitive this topic is to do with what currently happened in the United States. So this is another reason why the government, for fear for confusing the jury and wanted to preclude those information. So we will see, we will see what the government, the court ruling will be on this.
Yeah, I want to add it a little bit more, because if we look at the page 9, if we look at the exact email, I think we can read just from what was being said in that box that it was my understanding that probably the CCP National Police actually took the witness to a hotel where
that's right, yeah.
where that the CCP police probably got cameras, got securities, and pressured him. Try to interview him and convince him by filing that claim, probably in front of these national police together. But just by saying, by forcing the witness to, falsely claim that he is a victim of the investment, also touches upon on how CCP's views about Mr. Guo in America. Because remember, the majority of the Chinese people doesn't even have access to Google or YouTube. So it was very hard for them to actually understand about the accurate information of what was going on into the United States. So there was, a purpose for the CCP police to mention about United States politics to the witness. It was almost saying that the CCP now is controlling America. We can tell you what will happen to the next presidency, and we can tell you, what the next presidency will do to Mr. Guo and his movement. this message was conveyed in that text.
That's
and I
correct.
think that was the exact point that the government was trying to say, that the message about the U.S. politics, about the U.S. election, about next presidency would confuse the jury. And it was the absolute point that we want to point out. It was how CCP harassed our supporters.
That's
it
right.
was how CCP addressed their propaganda in China, and it was the way that all of our supporters, when we view Chinese Communist Party, we understood that their hands are in the back. This was the exact reason that they used this tone of attitude to address and to harass our supporter in China.
And there's 30 exhibits that can be introduced through this witness, and but so that's the government's position. They wanted to preclude all of this. So we will see what the court ruling will be on that, because I think it's pretty important for shedding a light in terms of how pervasive, how intrusive, really, the long arms, jurisdiction of the CCP, of the Chinese Communist Party.
And also, that's one of the reasons why I feel like the viewers. This is as we are getting close to the finish line of the trial. This is the essence of the trial itself.
That's
this
correct.
is this is the meat of the whole trial. I mean,
Correct.
being able to see how the two countries, through two countries' methods, I guess, in like from the CCP, against some of the supporters of the movement.
Yeah.
I think this is why it could get a little bit more complicated for the jury, and that's something that I could see because of the fact that they do have to understand the methods of the CCP,
Correct.
and that is something that Americans are quite frankly not familiar with. And this is why we do what we do, to spread more awareness of the methods of the Chinese Communist Party for the rest of the world to begin to see it manifest in any way, shape, or form in Western society. And that is the reason why we do what we do is the fact that the communism from the Chinese Communist Party is spreading through their infiltrations over time. Especially if you look at media, that is a great way to tell.
Yeah.
But for something like this is much more serious to I guess show up, especially in a court testimony. And I
That's
guess
correct,
that's
yeah.
one of the reasons why we really have to see the decision made on this. And actually, as we are going live right now, I saw the next document being uploaded onto the docket, and it is a response. It should be a response from our legal team.
Oh, already?
Wow.
So that
that's
is something
interesting.
that
Yeah,
we're gonna
we'll
be
go read right away
Yeah, of
after the
course.
show. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But essence, remember our defense team has actually they submitted a dismiss of this entire case at the beginning, even prior to, and based on CCP, right? This is you understand it, you framed it wrongly, basically, right? This is not a fraud. Okay, this has nothing to do with fraud. This has to do with a political movement that go against the tyranny. But I guess we didn't at that time we didn't convince the government or the court to dismiss. But we're hoping. I'm really hoping through the next few days of testimony would turn the table completely and to show Americans what really this is about. But we have limited time. But the third point I want to show up is a very interesting person is going to come up, and I didn't anticipate it until I actually read this document this morning. And so this is the third bullet point that the court, so the government seeks to preclude defense witness George Higginbotham. Okay, so this person's name, if you have been following us, this is probably very familiar for you. And he is one of the agents of the CCP that participated in the repatriation schemes that happened in 2017, along with a few other very influential figures in the United States that targeted Miles School. So Miles School's defense teams, I guess, summoned him through a subpoena or whatever, asked him to testimony in this case. So, but then the government seeks to preclude some of his testimonies. Okay, so that's going to be very interesting because we're literally using a perpetrator, I could say this way, and because he pleaded guilty, right? He pleaded guilty, admitted to one account of bank fraud. He had a better deal with the DOJ at the time because he was a DOJ employee and he was a lawyer, attorney himself. So, so this is a very interesting. And the fourth one is the court seeking, the government seeking to preclude the defendant's experts from rendering any opinions regarding the testimonies of the government witnesses. So in this, what they're talking about is we're going to have Miles Guo's case has a 3 experts testimonies. One of the expert testimony is from the cryptocurrency expert, and her name is Maggie Sklar. And she was planning to basically commenting, maybe not commenting, but respond to the government testimonies given by 2 witnesses. If you recall, one is Jesse Brown, the former employee of Himalaya Exchange, regarding his understanding of cryptocurrency, and the other one is Samuel Roberts from the BitGo, who is the vendor, who was the vendor of the Himalaya Exchange. So both of them actually had expressed their view on public blockchain, on cryptocurrency, on Hcoin. So the experts from the Miles Guo defense team are prepared to basically respond to some of their sayings, but right now the government is seeking to preclude that portion from our experts' testimony. So that's the first one. So the last one is they're seeking to exclude irrelevant evidence regarding redemptions paid by the Himalaya Exchange. If you recall, especially the government's last witness, Wei Chen, right? I remember vividly, specifically, the government asked her, "Oh, have you ever been able to redeem money, real money, like a fiat currency from the Himalaya Exchange?" And she said, "Nope. Not to the United States dollars, not GBP, GBP, not Swiss franc, not any other fiat currency." So she testified that. But this is a direct, basically, rebuttal to what that witnesses and possibly other witnesses also mentioned, in the previously in the government's testimonies. So, but the government right now is seeking to preclude that information from the defense. As a matter of fact, we know there is a legal class action lawsuits from the Himalaya Exchange investors, right? I think it was 5,000 of them are actually, I think it was suing. Is it DOJ they're suing?
Well, I think, the point is that the government was trying to portray that the investments or the purchase of H dollars into Himalaya Exchange was not redeemable, and therefore that they want to put on a claim as, it is a financial scheme. However, the government also indicated in its own indictment against Mr. Guo, saying that, since September 2022, the DOJ had already started a series of seizure actions against many of these entities, including bank accounts. And it was since then, one of the Himalaya entities were impacted by the seizure notice. And so it was why one of the clearing bank accounts got seized by the DOJ, by the United States government. And it was starting from that point, the redemption function stopped, from Himalaya Exchange got stopped because of legal pressures from the government. So I found it very interesting to see, that the seizure notice had come into place, and but at the same time the government also pulled on an allegation saying that your redemption function is not available. That's right, because all series of actions goes back to the same party. And so I'm looking forward to see our defense response letters on this on this specific preclude request from the government. I'm also very excited to see for the next 2 days what arguments would be made by the defense team, because I would assume within that very limited amount of time that our defense will come out with very strong and very impressive arguments.
Right, and also we did just run out of time for the show, so just to summarize everything, I think we as I have said before, we are at the finish line of pretty much the trial, and we're gonna get to see some of the very essence of this case, and also another thing I would like to really point out is the fact that are we able to paint the full picture of the case itself, because I think a number of aspects that were brought up I think really can give us an idea of the arguments the defense's team is trying to make, and that is to really give the jury and everybody there the full and complete picture of what is going on, and most importantly, who is Miles. Just the attacks he has been
adding
getting.
a quick note here. So we respect whatever the court decision is on this, but that doesn't mean that the Congress should rest on it. And I would highly recommend, if some of the things that the court agreed to preclude for not confusing the jury, I think the Congress should investigate, because this is a fight Americans and the Chinese people are in together because we're a go against the communist ideology. So I highly recommend the Congress pay attention to all the information, whether it's being introduced or not introduced. Keep going and dig in more because we have the receipts. If Congress wants to see, we definitely can offer.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's why the Higginbotham aspect
right.
to it is very important because this has already been proven of the CCP and certain individuals in the United States efforts to repatriate Miles. And this is a string of efforts, very lengthy
Yeah.
and very in-depth efforts to lobby, defend President Trump to repatriate Miles. So with that being said, I mean, you guys can go and do your own research on this case because, like I said, there's a lot of details to it and there's a lot of very interesting individuals as well that are related to
Yeah.
these repatriation efforts. So with that being said, we look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow on Miles Trial as we update you on more information that will show up in tomorrow's trial. And I also want to thank Ava and Isla for coming onto the show. And with that being said, we will see you guys tomorrow. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. God bless.